Hi guys, welcome to the Classics Corner. I'm Kat and I went to see the new Wonder Woman movie. I've already done a quick history of Wonder Woman and the representation of her as an Amazon, and I will link that below. That was my last video. But yeah, now that here I'm talking about the film and how that represents the ancient world and the Amazonness of Diana. So, welcome. So first things first, it very much holds true to, the film very much holds true to the representation of Wonder Woman as an Amazon from the comics. So it is very much a focus on the love and compassion of Wonder Woman rather than the sort of ancient depictions of Amazon, which is, if you've seen my previous video, much more violent. The Amazons were not a loving race of people, they were quite violent, while Wonder Woman's powers and her personality is very much set in love and compassion, so there is some differences there. The film's main, which spoilers for the film by the way, the film's main antagonist is Ares. Well, actually I would argue that the film's main antagonist is the concept of war itself, external to the character of Ares, but Ares, I suppose, is the personified big bad. Ares, you know, the Greek god of war, so there is an ancient Greek god as the main antagonist. The depiction of Ares isn't really the depiction of Ares from ancient literature. The depiction of Ares very much fits again with the comic depiction of him, rather than the depiction you'd find of Ares in, say, something like the Iliad, where he is enjoying war for the sake of war. He is the god that thrives on human conflict, rather than the god who in this film wants to, again spoilers, wants to destroy humanity because he considers them evil and sort of corrupting the pure world, and he wants to destroy them, and he uses subtle, or not so subtle, suggestion to cause conflict, to try and cause humans to have conflict which would then destroy them, which is a bit different from the ancient perspective of the god, who would be the god of warriors and either protect the ones he liked or try to smite the ones he didn't. So Ares, the god in ancient Greek depictions, relies on humanity for prayer as much as the other gods do. Wouldn't necessarily want to destroy them. The representation of the gods in this is a slight different aspect, and that's where I get most of my classical quibbles. It didn't, by the way, I've done another more personal, more review on the film, so if you want to know my opinions on that, cover it, and this topic doesn't really come into it, which is, within the film there is a sort of secondary narrative. Hippolyta, Diana's mother, is telling her the origins of the Amazons and the origins of their conflict with Ares specifically, and in this narrative, again, it's mentioned that the Amazons were created to fight against Ares, which again in mythology sometimes they are the children of Ares, so differences. But one aspect of the narrative is that because of Ares wanting to kill all humanity, the other gods, there was a war between the gods and Ares managed to kill the gods. And personally, as a classicist, I don't particularly like depictions of the ancient Greek gods being killed. Mainly because the immortality of the gods is actually, it's not just oh, they're gods, they can't be killed. It's actually an important classical textual relevance to the gods. It's important that the gods can't die because of the themes that exist around the gods in ancient literature. You can see this very much in the Iliad, where there is a separation between the mortals fighting and the gods fighting, because the gods fighting is superficial. The conflict with humans is depicted as awful and life-threatening and terrible and glorious and just immense, because humans live short lives and they can die, and when they die they lose something. There is consequence to their actions because they can die, while the conflict with the gods is superficial and silly and a bit domestic. Like literally they have a fight and then they all laugh and they all drink and they go to bed. Well, on Earth, on the mortal plane, it's so important. So I find that thematic difference between mortality and immortality in ancient Greek literature just showing that the gods can get away with horrible, cruel and awful things because ultimately it never matters to them, because they will always continue. An important part. And whilst this doesn't really play into Wonder Woman so much, I'm actually not sure if they are actually all dead. We'll see in other sequels. But it's just, it comes up in other modern media as well. I just wanted to talk about it here because it did come up in this very recently, and it appears that Diana kills Ares at the end of the film, and spoilers, I've spoiler warned you like a couple of times, so please don't yell at me in the comments. And I'm just not sure. I quibble about gods dying. That's just my point. Because in ancient literature it's important. There are other classical aspects of this film, especially in the depictions of people talking about war. They quote Thucydides quite a few times, which Thucydides wrote the Peloponnesian War, the histories of the Peloponnesian War, which was a conflict between Athens and Sparta. And some scholars have compared the World War I with the Peloponnesian War because of the sort of slow nature of the conflict and because of how it dragged in lots of the other city-states of Greece, because it was Athens and her allies and Sparta and her allies, which people have compared that to the World War I. Also, people have used the Thucydidean quotes to discuss war a lot. It's a really complex book on war, so it's fun to see Wonder Woman acknowledge the ancient texts about war when you talk about a film that is very much about war. Overall, I think it used the classics well. I think it used, again, my quibble against the gods dying, kind of a different thing, because that's just pure personal opinion about the interpretation of the nature of the gods, but it's not a major factor. I still loved the film a lot, like I absolutely loved it. But basically the depiction of the Amazons very much holds to the depictions of the Amazons which I discussed in my last video, in that the character of Diana came first and then the classics, and I think this film actually did that a lot as well. I think that they built the story and the characters out of the comics, because also that's another element of play here, and then added other classical elements in. For example, the quotes about Thucydides, Diana speaks Greek at some point. Yeah, it's there a reference of texts of Clio about love, which I don't think those texts actually exist. They might, but it sounds like a sort of thing that would exist. If you've seen the film, you know what I'm referencing. If you haven't, go watch the movie, find out what I'm referencing. But basically, yeah, that's kind of depicting how I feel. We'll see if there are any other depictions of gods or heroes or any other mythological things in other, hopefully there'll be more Wonder Woman movies. Don't know how the DC Extended Universe is going, but hopefully there'll be more, and we'll see if there's any more classics in them. So I will see you guys next week with another video. I hope you enjoyed watching this. I upload every Sunday, so if you like this video, please like, share and subscribe, and click the little notifications button so you don't miss a video. Okay, bye guys!